It's on. Is it on? Hey, 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 hey. It's shirt day part 2. But we're gonna show you some cute stuff on a bodice too. And then for anybody that did page to stage B, we're gonna record a little video later today to send everybody of this fairy doll tutu all finished up. And then we took a bunch of pictures of the more artsy tutu that we'll send to everybody too. But so hopefully everybody got the link already for the when we did this the last time. So like, right, we told people they could join last time or this time and you'll get all the recordings. Two gals that are paid for today that didn't do the last time, the flat patterning is brand new to them. So we are going to go back and we're going to do the body block again, because like that's kind of where all of this starts and it doesn't hurt to review. And then we're going to do a couple different styles of man shirt pattern today. I'm almost done with the different sizes of the trunk pattern that we've had to recreate. YAGP kicked our butt this year, but it's almost done. Just a few adjustments. And then that's kind of it. But first, look how cute this thing is turning out. This is the fairy doll bodice. Jared's been putting the last little details and stuff on it. He's been putting the last little details and stuff on it today. But we wanted to show you this sleeve. How cute is this little sleeve? This is in the Alexandra pattern, but I wanted to show you the little trick we've got to keeping this puffy. The elastics, although tight around her bicep and around her elbow, when she moves, it was just sliding down her arm a little bit. So what we did on the inside, what Jared did this morning, on the inside of this sleeve, you'll see there's an elastic. There's an elastic that runs from the shoulder down to the first poof, and then from the first poof down to the second poof. So there's an elastic keeping the poofs puffy. And you could even do, you know, an elastic kind of from each balance point down, but one from the shoulder down is good. So we just wanted to show you that fun little trick. I can almost get my arm in here. I don't know how she can get her arm all the way up to the shoulder. Look, her armhole is like the size of my elbow. But that's a good trick to know. So we just wanted to show off a little bit. And right, if somebody here is interested in the page to stages, let us know. And we're probably going to do another one in February or March with some other stuff we've got cooking. But let's look at this shirt and kind of review and talk about what we did last time. So we'll look here first on the table, and then we'll show it on the dress form. So we did just like a really, really basic man's ballet shirt the last time. That will eventually everybody will get a copy of this once I'm done playing catch up. I tell you, being sick a few weeks during our busy time was the worst thing ever. But we did a back with a yoke and the back slightly gathered. We did kind of a full sleeve with a cuff, and then we did a collar with a self roll, or it returns back on itself. And then we put it on this mystery trunk pattern that everybody will be getting. And we'll look at the trunk again tomorrow. But let's just look at the pattern pieces really quick that we used to come up with that. And we started with the body block, which is what we'll start with today, because it is brand new for a couple folks. And I think patterning is just the best thing to know and do. So from our body block, we created our back yoke, so the top back neck of the shirt. And then we just picked a point where we wanted the yoke to end, and then we expanded the body. So imagine this void here filled in with paper. So we expanded the body of the back to give something to gather in. And then our front block, really the only thing we had to do with it is we got rid of the dart, because we don't want it fitted. We want a more relaxed fit. And then we added a lap for the buttons and buttonholes. And then we started tentatively drawing the shape of our collar on. And then from that, we developed our collar by taking that initial shape and reducing the outside edge. So you'll see when you rewatch the other recordings, when you shrink the outside edge of something that lays flat, it has to crawl up on itself so that it can meet the body of the shirt. So There's that. And then we made a great big wide sleeve, which when it's gathered down, isn't that huge. So here's our slashed and spread sleeve, the top of our sleeve, the bottom of our sleeve. We lengthened it a little bit. Oh, at the back cuff, we scooted the back of the sleeve down, and then we created a simple cuff to go with our sleeve. And then we made a facing that follows around the whole front and the whole back neck of the shirt. So for the folks that are here like first time today, this is what you're going to see when you watch those links. And let's look at the shirt really quick. Over here, you want to flip it around here. We're going to flip her around, and then we're going to measure the dress form too. So he's going to start with some clothes on, and then we're going to take his clothes off. So this is the shirt we developed from that pattern. It does fit the dress form, but this mannequin has like an oddly long crotch girth. So if it looks like the shirt is like, it's because it is. So really, this mannequin is a little too tall for it. But this is the thong version of the trunk pattern that we'll be sending you. So it's kind of like a little sexier cut. But you can see in the back, here's our yoke. And we doubled the yoke, and we caught the back of the shirt up in the yoke. So there's 2 layers of back yoke. Here's that fullness across our back. Then you can see there's our collar that's got the little bit of roll in it. So the collar stands up about 1 inch, and then it lays down on itself. So if you wanted to change the roll of a collar like this, oh, I don't have any pins. Yes, I do. If you're messing on the dress form or in a fitting and you want to change something, if you just start to take away the outside edge more, you will see that the collar starts to raise itself up. So that's something really cool to know. The more you take away the outside, the higher the collar will have to lay. Then let's look at the front here. So we've got our over and underlap, right? Boys are always left over and girls are always right. So we've got this overlapping like a boy. And then we've got our facing in here, from our interfaced facing that is finishing off our center front edge and going around to the back neck. Then we've got the underarm of our sleeve has a built-in gusset, and we'll look at that again today. And then we're going to draft a more like peasanty styled shirt that's got a looser, more relaxed armhole with a square gusset, just because that's like a popular look for like folk dancers or Russian and Nutcracker, any of those. We've got our gathers in the cap, and then we've got our cuff built on. And you'll see too, as the shirt hangs, you can see that there's that extra bit that we added. I can lift the arm up. You can see that there's the extra bit we added to the back of the cuff. So it looks like he's reaching forward, which is what you want. If you finish it and it's going the other way, you've done something creative, and that's good too. So let me, the book we're working from, and I can email this to the new folks who this is new for, is the Costume Technician Handbook. I should get money from these publishers, just because it's like real universal and it's like the best basic approach to this stuff. And so we're going to make a man's body block that fits the dress form, and then draft some different shirts and look at some different collars today. And so this pattern, once we get it digitized and I'm caught up with my life, everybody will get one of these. Right? I think I say that in every webinar. Once I'm back on track with everything we're doing. Okay, so we're going to put this pattern away and not lose it. And we're going to start with taking the measurements that we need to do the body block. And I think the first time we did this, I just kind of blasted through, but we're going to actually like relook at the steps. So this is like ultra review for some of you guys, and then for some of you today, it's brand new. But I think it doesn't hurt to go through this again as many times as I've done it too. I enjoy doing this. I think patterning is the best thing you can do. And I always tell people if they're still uncomfortable with patterning, the more they do it, the more, oh, we'll measure the dress from here in a second. The more they do it, then they get the patterning epiphany where all of a sudden they're like, by God, I can do all of it. It doesn't matter what it is. But let's write down what we need. We need the chest. So if you've got the book, I'm on page 126. We're going to do chest. We're going to do waist. We're going to do back, neck to waist. We're going to do shoulder. We're going to do across front. We're going to do across back. And because this shirt is going to go down his body a bit, let's do the high hip and let's do the waist to high hip. That's a good bit of review too. So on our dude, let's measure those things. I'm going to do a couple at a time. So if he was a man here, the other thing I have the guys do is take, oh, I'm in centimeters. Good for some of you, not for me. I have the guys, I measure their chest both not with a breath and with a breath, and then I split the difference. So we're going to say his chest is 38, which is what it is in the book. And then we're going to say his waist, I can't remember if he comes out the same as the book. So right now we're not measuring with any ease. His waist is 29. I'm going to say it's 30. His across front. So the across front, like if you can tie a string from the underarm to the shoulder, that's where the point is you're measuring. You're measuring from there to there, the across the front. So it's not under the armpit. It's like halfway between the armpit and the shoulder. And it's how wide is the armhole. So like I wouldn't measure the armhole on my Chicago PD sweatshirt because it's too relaxed of an armhole. I would measure it from, a fitted dress shirt or tie a string. So we're going to say his across front is 13. His shoulder or neck to shoulder, we're going to say is 5. Let's do his waist to high hip. So this guy, another problem with some of the forms is they don't have a really good butt. I'm going to say his waist to high hip is 4 inches. Oh, I might need to clean it. I'll survive. I'll unplug the microphone if I have to go blow my nose. We're going to say his high hip is 33, but we're going to like add ease here in a little bit and talk about that. His across back is measured kind of at the same height as we measured the across front. 15. So that's good. Pretty much on everybody, the across back comes out larger than the across front, unless it's a woman and she's got higher boobs. So remember, you're not measuring across the fullest part of a woman's chest when you do this. You're measuring above it for the across front. And his back, neck to waist is 18. Okay, so let's look in the book. And it starts with draw a rectangle. Now I'm going to do this where we do the front and back separate. So, so for the folks that this is new for, you're going to read this through in the book and then rewatch this, and then you'll be like, yeah, I can see what he did different and why. But I will explain it as we go. Okay, so right now, the first thing it has us do is figure out the width of the waist dart, and you take that by subtracting the chest from the waist. So that's easy. Our chest is 38, our waist is 30. The difference is 8 inches, so he's going to get a 1 inch wide waist dart. So that would be like if we're making a fitted coat or something with a princess or a prince seam in the front and back. Let's see, a tunic, you'd need the dart in there, a fitted tunic. Then we're going to divide the chest in half. So half of 38 is 19. Is that right? Somebody tell me if that's not right. We're going to divide the waist in half. Half of 30 is 15. And we're going to divide the back, neck to waist into 4. So 4 divided by 18, or 18 divided by 4 is 4.5. Then we're going to cut the across front and the across back in half. So half of 13 is 6.5. Half of 15 is 7.5. The high hip, we need to divide in half. What's half of 33? 15, 16.5. 16.5. I did it. I figured it out. I couldn't do it with the new math. Oh, bless anybody's heart who's got kids and has to deal with that. Forget it. I can't do it. I tried. Okay, draw a rectangle. So the horizontal lines across our rectangle are half of the chest, and Rosemary here in the book has us put a 1/2 inch in. So there's a smidge of ease. So if we don't put the 1/2 inch in, we have a skin tight fitted thing. If we put the 1/2 inch in, we end up with 1 inch of ease all the way around the body, because even though we're putting in a 1/2, we're only making half of the pattern. So when you do the rest of the pattern, you've got 1 inch of ease. So we're going to follow Rosemary here. But if you wanted a shirt that you knew you just wanted 4 inches bigger in the chest, you could add that 4 inches right now. So instead of the chest being 38, you could just say it's 38, 39, 40, 41, 42. So you can make a fitted body block, or a body block with a little ease, or a body block that's got considerable ease in it right out of the gate. So our box is our back, neck to waist, and then going across our box is half of our chest plus a 1/2 inch. So across is going to be 19.5, but we need to divide. We're going to divide the front and back. We're going to leave a little space down the middle. So where it shows here in this first figure that the front and back are touching, I'm going to draft my body block with like a 2-inch runway in the middle, just a measurement that doesn't matter what we leave. We're just going to leave some room in the middle. So half of 19.5 is 9.25. So 9 3/4. I'm just separating the front and back. So instead of 19.5, I'm going to do a box that's 9 3/4 and another box that's 9 3/4. So I need to scoot up my paper a little bit. Okay, so the right will be the front. So I'm going over 9 3/4. Then I'm just leaving some amount of space. Don't even need to measure it. And then on the other side, I'm going to go 9 3/4. And then vertically, I'm going to go our back, neck to waist, which is 18. So we're in the book. We've got a front and a back stuck together at the side seam. The only thing I'm changing right now is I'm leaving kind of a little patch between the two. And then remember, if you are doing a woman's block, that you need to add in the depth of the bust dart into your back, neck to waist, especially on the front. You can do the back a little bit differently. Hey, we're halfway there. Okay. Now we're going to add construction lines. So this tells us to divide the A across the top, A to C and B to D, in half, which we've done. So here's our divide A, B, C, D, whatever that is, in half. We've just, instead of having a side seam in the middle, we've left some room. Then we are going to go down 1/4 of the back, neck to waist measurement 2 times. So our back, neck to waist was 18. So we're going to come down 4.5 and check it out. This first line down is where our across front and our across back lay. Our second one is where the armpit is and where the bottom of the armhole is. So if we measure that's top half is 9 and the bottom half is 9. It will come out a little different on a woman because of the bust dart. And in those who this is new for, start with this, then do the girl. Okay. Yeah, boy, it's Rosemary uses a lot of dialogue to just show come down from the top twice. It says, now you are ready to do the front and back of the body block. Begin with the front. We're going to do the neck and shoulder. And this yields like a 14-inch neck. So we're going to later on mess with the neck to make it a better size. But what you do from the top rightmost corner is you go over 3 inches and up a half an inch. Then from that point, you come down 2.5 inches, well, 3 inches from the point, 2.5 from the top line. And essentially you're making a 3-inch box. And then into that box, you put a soft curve with the ruler that I thought I brought over here, but I guess I didn't. We've got a couple of these, and we need Stuart to cut more of these ones out because they're handy for this stuff. So now you want to put just a soft kind of curve in there. And if what happens to us a couple times, folks, we get in Facebook message, we'll be working on a body block that did patterning with me, and they send me their picture. And so here's the center front, right? Here's the top line. Here's where the neck goes. A big problem is people do this neck way too angular or way too shallow of a curve. You've got to think that like it needs to follow the roundness of a neck hole. So that's one thing to kind of watch for, is that you get this nice deeper curve. A deeper curve is better than a shallower curve. If you're not sure, it should be deeper. And the other thing that you can use kind of is a gauge, that if you divide the imaginary square in half and your neck is to the right of it, your neck will be way too tight. You've got to come to the left of that, which is what I did up here. Now, to make the front shoulder, we are going to come down. So I'm kind of at the bottom of step 3, where it says draw the neck. We did that. Now we're going to come down 1 3/8 inches and make a horizontal line. And this 1 3/8 inches step here is the same for a man, a woman, a kid, a giant, a puppy, who knows. Then we're going to come from the top of the neck down to that line. So that line is helping us figure out the slant of our shoulder. So our shoulder, we said, was 5 inches. So I'm going to put 0 at the top of the neck and come down only 5 inches. There we go. We're moving right along. Now we're going to make the front armhole. So like right when people are here with me in person doing patterning, I say, without reading this, what do we know already? We know at what line the armhole, the front and back width were measured, and we know the measurement of the front and back width. So without even looking in the book, you should be able to conclude that the across front was 13 across the front, but we're only doing half of the body. So I'm going to come over half of that, only 6.5. So just from the measurements and knowing what lines are what, you start to get an idea for like how all of this goes. Because I know, when I first started with this, reading this stuff, and there's other modes of this, there's other books where you come up with a similar thing. It's a bit overwhelming. So it's better to just kind of like divorce yourself from it a little bit and go for it, and then go back and check the book. Because I have had people that just go for it completely and they go down the wrong path 100%, and then you've got to like work backwards. So don't listen to anything I say, right? I'm like glass is half full and half empty. Now we're going to do the front armhole. So from the edge of the shoulder we just marked, it usually has you put, well, it says to put a straight line from there down to that mark. But I generally leave only like the top little bit of it straight, and I curve all the rest. And then we're going to curve it down to our armpit, which is the second line down from the top. And that actually fits pretty good. So there's our pretty good front armhole. Now, the other thing to remember, and it talks about it in the other time we did this, with the other shirt recording, if your across front is on either side of where you think it is, or if you look at it and you go, well, the ruler sure looks more appealing on said curve, mark both of them and then then split the difference, because like you have a sense of like what a human body looks like and what a pattern looks like. So it's better to not take either extreme and kind of find the middle road. Then if you have an alteration, it'll probably be less of an alteration. Okay, so we've done that. We've connected points N, P, and O. I never write the points. I couldn't, if I were strung up over hot lava and asked to name one point on this, I couldn't do it. Now the side seam. So the side seam, we know where our center front is. We know our center front. We know our center back. The side seam is coming from figuring out where the waist is on the front. So a fourth of our waist, so our waist is 30, so a fourth of that is 7.5. And then we also know that we've got this 1-inch waist dart. Remember, we figured you can't see it, but we wrote down 1-inch waist dart. We're going to come over 7.5 plus the inch waist dart, 7.5, 8.5. Then, just because someone has decided it looks better, we add an extra quarter going to the back, and that's something I agree with. If your side seam is a little forward on the body, it looks like people are leaning over talking to you. But if the side seam is like a smidge to the back, it actually looks like you're standing up straighter. Then we're going to connect that to our armpit. We nearly have the front completely done. Now we're going to do step 6 on page 127, the waist dart, from a point halfway between D and Q. Oh, I can remember that. It's like Dairy Queen. Hot eats, cool treats. We're going to find the halfway mark and mark that. It's like right when I measure between there, it's like 8 7/8 or something. It's easier for me to just center 9 inches over those 2 points to find the middle. And we're going to do our 1-inch waist dart. And it goes about an inch below the armpit line. You can take it up to the armpit line, which will make a little more sleek fitted thing. But if you go a little bit below the armpit line, it gives a little room for them to go and take a teeny weeny breath. So let's do that. We're going to go like an inch below. Let me see what it actually says, how far below to go. It says an inch below, so I wasn't just making that up. Okay, now we are going to do the back. So the front neck is a little wider. We went over 3 inches from the upper rightmost, and now we're going to go over only 2.5 inches from the upper left backmost. So that 2.5 inches is going to be the curve of our neck. And you put just an itty bitty little curve in there. Then what else do we know? We knew we have a front width and a back width. So now we're going to refer to our back width. And the front, we use this random 1 3/8 down because the book says to. The back shoulder, to get the slant of the shoulder, we actually have to put the back width in first. So what we do to the right of the very center backmost line, we're coming over half of our back width, which is 7.5. And then we go up 3 inches from there. And that's what's going to give us the slant of our shoulder. So now the front shoulder was 5 inches. You add a 1/2 inch normally to the back shoulder, and that's what the book tells you, so that there's a little bit of ease in the back shoulder. You can either get rid of the ease later or ease it in, because like even if you like take a good t-shirt and cut it apart, you'll see sometimes that there is a little extra fabric eased in the back for comfort of wear. Now we're going to use the ruler again and put in our back armhole. And here I'm getting what I talked about in the front. It's like, here's where the book is telling me to put the armhole curve. Here is where the curve in my ruler wants the curve to be. So I'm going to find a spot right in the middle. And I'm going to kind of ignore my initial intuition and ignore what the book says and do something kind of between the two. And in any French curve will work. You just need something that's got like that kind of curve. And I had something else insightful about that, and now I can't remember what it was. Shoulders. Oh, what I was gonna say, right, for those of you who have done this a few times, The book, right, it tells you to like always come down that 1 3/8 for the front shoulder. It tells you always to go up 3 inches for the back shoulder. But if you've got a kid whose back, neck to waist is super duper tiny, well, one thing is different. Their bodies are more of a box. You know, like for a long time, kids are like this shape. It's like chest, waist, hips, you know, and they don't have much muscle built up in their arms or anything. So like a kid's shoulder is usually much straighter across than like a man's shoulder. But if you've got, like, if you're doing like a toddler or something from this similar kind of style, we know that going up 3 inches from this point, this isn't in the book, we know that going 3 inches up from there works really good with like an 18-inch back, neck to waist. It works really good with a 16, with a 15, with a 14. But let's say now we're getting into a 12-inch back, neck to waist. So if you use a proportion wheel, which you can get online. They use it for like reducing and enlarging copies. If I know that 3 inches works really good for like 15, 16, 17, 18 back, neck to waist, I'm going to go ahead and put 3. I'll write this out. I'm going to say it works good for 15, 16, 17, 18. The middle of that is 16 and a half. So I'm going to say that a 3-inch raise for the shoulder is super for a 16 and a half inch back, neck to waist. So 3 is great for 16. But let's say now that you're doing a 12 or an 11 or a 10-inch back, neck to waist. So see what I did? I bumped the camera, but I said 3 is good for 16. We're saying 3 inches is good for like 15 to 18. 3 inches is good for 15 to 18. But now let's say what's our next range? 11, 12, 13, 14. In the center of that is 2 3/8. So we're going to say that maybe 2 3/8 or 2.5 is better. This might cause questions for some of you, but anybody who's played with me, look, oh my God, look how faded it is. Anybody who's played with me, that doesn't sound right at all. Anybody who's experienced me in a patterning class, that didn't sound better, will know that I'm addicted to this thing. And like the thing too, that somewhere in the earlier part of this book, Rosemary refers that like this is to get through, you know, theater actors and you do have to adapt it somewhat. So that's one way you can adapt it. Okay, moving on. Right, I said I was going to explain this clearer, and now I'm just like going somewhere else. Now we are going to finish we did finish the back shoulder. We finished the back armhole. Here's where she says too, note that the back shoulder seam is a 1/2 inch longer than the front. This will be eased into the front shoulder when stitched. It allows for extra shoulder movement. Now let's do the back side seam. So we have to figure out the back waist. So 1/2 of our waist again, 1/4 of our waist again is 7 1/2. 7 1/2 plus our dart. Now where in the front we went to the left 1/4 of an inch with the side seam, we are going to also go in the back to the left 1/4 of an inch. So we took away 1/4 of an inch from the back. Now we are going to put the back dart in, and I wonder if it's totally centered because I do it, I kind of make it up every time. Yep. So she has you go exactly in the center of the waist. So 8 inches divides into 4. I typically do it a little more to the left because I'm imagining that maybe he's got a nice curved princess seam in a coat, or that he's got like a fiddle-backed coat with a really dramatic seam in it. So you can put it in the center, or you can put it a smidge to the left of center. You have our permission to do that. If you put it visually, when you put it a little bit to the left, it's just a little more interesting for like a princess seam. Rather than dividing the body up completely perfectly, if you, on some things, divide it up a little uniquely or a little bit uncentered, it will look more correct. Because if you cut my horrible body up, my belly, and actually divided me into even fourths, it's gonna look like they're actually crooked because the fourth in the front won't look like the fourth in the back. So if you push things a little bit towards the back, it will look sleeker. Does that make any sense? Did that make sense to you? It made sense to Jared, so we're moving on. If you have, let me say the reverse of it. If you have the dart at the middle or a nanomillimeter to the right of the middle in the back, it will look like the person's back is fatter and that their body is fatter. So moving the dart either centered or a smidge closer to the center back, they will look slimmer. Yeah, that's a better way to say it. And I'm going to lose this. It's my New Year's resolution to stop eating meatloaf and 10 sugary coffees a day. But I can't wait till spring when the melanges are back at Julius Minor. Okay, so we've done the body block that's in the book. Let's elaborate down to our high hip now, which we said our waist to high hip was 4 inches. So that in the other class of this class and in the recordings, that's kind of, I think we went 3 inches below the waist to attach our trunk, but down to the high hip is a good place to attach the trunk down to, or even lower. So if you're putting a trunk on your shirt, which we'll look at again tomorrow, which is looked at in the other recording, if they're going to wear the tights at their high hip, your shirt needs to go even further down than that. So you can have a shirt where it's almost all the way down, and then there's just like almost like the remnant of a thong holding the front and back down. But now we got to complete our darts. So we've come down to the high hip, which isn't in the book. But, you know, when you have your pattern epiphany, now the back dart is going to only go to the high hip. And the front dart, somewhere in some other publication, I found this elaborate formula for figuring out how far down the front dart should go based on like astronomy and outseam and stuff. But I actually figured out that really it's within an eyelash length of the same length as the dart actually is. So we're going to come down. I measured how tall the dart was, and I made myself a pivot point here. That's where my marker is. And we're finishing the dart. Now we got to finish the high hip because we don't have a high hip in here. So our high hip was 33. We divided that in half as 16 and a half. Just like the waist, we only need a quarter of the high hip. So 8 1/4 is my magic number. And I'm going to pretend the dart is sewn closed, right? The paper is, you can sew it with your mind. So on this side of my dart's 4 1/4. I'm going to slide 4 1/4 to the other side of my dart. I'm going to go 8 1/4 plus a quarter, just like we did on the waist. So here's my front absolutely fitted thing. Now let's do the same on the back. We are going to go over 8 1/4 minus a quarter. And just like our dress form, this has a pretty uncurvy shape to the high hips. This dress form doesn't have a lot going on in the high hips. Another thing that I like to do on the back of something like this is just drop the very center back about like a 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch and angle it up to the front. And that gives you just a little more room over the caboose. Now let's trace this off and make a folk shirt. But I'm going to blow my nose really, really, really fast because I'm going to have trouble here. I'll be right back. I wonder if you can hear me blowing my nose over here. I can just mute it. What? Yeah, mute it. I'm back. Jared muted it, so you didn't have to hear that. I really should just put Kleenex over here and have a signal for you to mute it so that I can blow my nose. Somebody in Washington, D.C. is calling. Okay, so actually, let's do a sleeve real quick, a sleeve block, and then we're gonna do some folk shirts from these two things. So let me actually I'm trying to decide if I want to trace this off right now. I'm going to trace one of these off. Will you get me another piece of paper for me to do a sleeve on? I want to trace this. So it's a good moment for you to quick blow your nose or run to the bathroom. I've got my tracing wheel. I've got some good weights here. And I really only care about the intersections to do this. I don't have to like trace the whole thing. Thanks. We want to keep our original one here. I love these spiky things. And I like to know always where the waist is. That's a good, I'm not concerned about where the arm across front and across back are, because that we can figure out by just like folding the paper down. Boop ba doop ba doop. Boop ba doop boop ba doop. So we can cut this up. I didn't put the inch in. There it is. So for a shirt, we probably don't need the darts, but I like to know it's there in case I need it. Jared, do you remember how long your arms are? Like shoulder to wrist?
Oh.
Do you know?
No.
We'll just make it up.
I just don't have a 6'2" arm span.
That's big. That's taller than you are. Okay, we've almost got this traced up. Let's actually, I've got a tape measure here. Why don't we just like point it at the dress form and we're just going to measure your arm for the sleeve. Okay, so we've traced this off, so we've got a copy that we're going to go mess with here in a little bit. Let's go to sleeves now. Doop. What? Where is it? So, right, I skipped some of the measurements that this book calls for sleeve, but let's see if we can work through it with what it does call for. Let's see. It wants shoulder to wrist, underarm to elbow, underarm to wrist, armhole and wrist. So shoulder to wrist. We'll do it with the arm bent. Underarm to elbow. Underarm to wrist. And then it wants the arm's eye. And it wants the wrist. Then I'm also going to measure the shoulder to elbow on the top side because it's nice to refer to stuff. Okay, so Jared's going to bend his arm like he's holding a big fat beach ball. And you figure out like not where the shoulder seam of his shirt is, but where you think his shoulder seam is. And I go to the back of the arm down to the wrist. So his shoulder to wrist is 27 and his shoulder to elbow is 14. So the book doesn't ask for shoulder to elbow. Then we're going to go with his arms straight. We're going to go from his underarm, and you don't want to go like way up in there. You just kind of imagine if he's got a fitted sleeve. So then there's his elbow. So his underarm to elbow is 10 and his underarm to wrist is 22. Then the armhole, you do like you're saddling a horse. You want it pretty tight, but you want to be able to get like maybe 2 fingers in there, unless your horse is holding its breath and is then gonna dump you later. And then his wrist is probably like 7 or 9 or 8. It's 7, the international maybe boy wrist. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to use my 24-inch ruler to start by making a box that is the shoulder to wrist measurement, and then the width of the box is the armhole minus 3 inches. So his armhole was 20, 17. So we're going to make a box that is 17 inches wide. Boom, 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 by 27 inches tall. So my ruler is only 24. So I've got to measure 3 inches first. So 17 wide, because it's the armhole minus 3 by 27 inches tall. And if you're thinking ahead, the first thing she's going to tell us to do is to divide it in half. So half of 17 is like 8.5. I'm a little bit off. Right now, let's see what the next step truly is. But we know how far it is from the underarm to the wrist, and we know how far it is from the underarm to the elbow. So let's look at this. Exactly. Locate G up from B at the underarm to wrist measurement. So that's where she's calling the bicep line. So his underarm to wrist was 22 inches. So I'm going to go up 22 inches. So the cap of his sleeve is going to go from his shoulder down to his underarm. So this is how far it is from his underarm to his wrist. That's the first thing we know. Then the next thing we know is how far is it from his underarm to his elbow. So his underarm to his elbow was 10 inches. So there's the underarm. We're going to come down from that point 10 inches. And this, I'm going to make this line dashed first. So we're going to say that's where Jared's elbow is. But remember, I also measured his shoulder to elbow on the outside. So now I'm going to come from his shoulder down. I measured that as 14 inches. So I have a discrepancy from where his shoulder to elbow is on the outside and where his shoulder to elbow is on the inside. So guess what? Split the difference. I like to imagine that you guys are yelling split the difference at home and your family. Well, the kids are maybe at school. They're like, they think you've lost it. Split the difference. That would be a good shirt for me. Halsey Onstage, split the difference. Now, step 3, because we blasted through the other steps. Locate K and L 1.5 inches on the insides of B and D. So our wrist is down here, our shoulder and sleeve cap are up there. So we're going in 1.5 inches. We're going in 1.5 inches. And then I don't know if it tells you to yet, but that is going to connect all the way up to this line that was the underarm to wrist. Done. Now make the sleeve cap. This totally throws people sometimes. It involves thirds, but I'm going to use a baby gate or a lady of Spain. You are going to find, we need to know the shoulder line. So this is our shoulder line. And each side of this, what they're calling the bicep line, even though I think the bicep is truly like down here a little bit, we need to divide each side of that into thirds. So you can do the math. You can fold a strip of paper. You can absolutely eyeball it. But I just use a buttonhole spacer. So I have 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Am I lost? Did I skip something?
I'm just looking at what page.
Oh, we're on page 136, and we just moved to page 137. So I'm at the step where we're creating the cap. So the first thing it does is you divide each side of the cap into thirds. And what's great too is like always refer back to the picture, because if you're like, I don't know what they mean, divide it in thirds. If you like zoom in on the picture, you can see like that's something divided into thirds. What is it? Oh, there used to be this spoof. If everybody knows Dora the Explorer, they used to have a spoof on Saturday Night Live, and they called her Maraca. And you know how Dora always tells the kids, like, flap your arms and stomp your feet and turn around? Maraca would always just say, don't question it, just do it. So that applies to some of this stuff. Then you make the top of it look like a kite. The next thing it tells you to do. Don't question it, just do it. Now, here's a good spot to actually mark some of these points. Look at the picture, and we're going to say this is G, and this is H over here. On the first line is M, N, then we have E from way earlier. The shoulder is E, M, N, O, P. So that's going to be M, N, O, P. On M, where this line, the vertical line, intersects the top of our kite here, we are going to go down 3/4 of an inch. So this is helping us create the perfect slope of a cap. We are going to go above N 3/4 of an inch. So where N intersects, we go above. So we go below, we go above, skip over the shoulder. O, we go up an inch. If we want a little more movement at the back of the sleeve, we go up 1 1/8 inches. If we want even more, we go up 1 1/4 inches. So O is higher than N, so that there's more room at the back of the arm. And P is easy. It's right where the two lines intersect. Then you take a curved ruler and try to connect all these points in the most beautiful set of sleeve cap curves you have ever seen. And then we're going to put a gusset in here because it's a dance costume. So now I raised my O a little bit because I want more room at the back. So to get my curve to look nice, I'm actually going to raise the shoulder a tiny bit, and that's okay. It will not hurt a thing to go a little bit above the top of that. And then we're going to finish the back. Would you, Mr. Jared, grab me one of those flexible rulers? So now things to know. In that same illustration on the top of 137, and this has come in question form before too, I say balance point every now and then in a class. Thank you. The balance point in the front is where the two lines, where the curved line intersects the kite. So it might be closer to M, it might be closer to N, who knows? It's just where those lines intersect. And the back balance point is P. So the back balance point will always be where they actually intersect. So, and if you look in the illustration, it tells you something about balance points. Why I like to know where the balance points are is like the underarm of a sleeve usually isn't gathered, and that's between the balance points. So the underside, no fluff, overside, tons of fluff. But we use them to make a nice built-in gusset. So a built-in gusset allows the arm to raise up. And like this little ballet bodice we looked at earlier has a built-in gusset. So when the sleeve is down, you can actually see there's a fold. You can see there's this fold of extra material that's pushing up into the arm. That's a built-in gusset. But what's great is when she completely extends her arm, she has so much length underneath that the bodice or the shirt or the tunic doesn't raise up. If you raise your arm and whatever it is you've made comes up, it means you need more gusset. And if you're in a fitting and you raise your arm, let's say this is a boy's tunic or shirt, if he raises his arm and this slides up at all, undo the underarm between the balance points and measure the gap. Actually measure how much raised up, and that's how much you either need to raise your armhole a little or add to your gusset or do a little bit of both. Usually you can take care of it all completely in the sleeve. But I'm going to measure how high it is up to my first balance point is like 2 inches, and my other balance point actually where it's like 1 3/4 inches. So I'm going to split the difference. Usually it comes out a little more extreme. So up to the first one was 2, up to the back one was 1 3/4 inches. So I'm going to say we're going to make a line 1 7/8 inches across there. And that's how high we need to raise up the underarm of the gusset. So that comes up kind of at the position between the two balance points. And if you need a visual quick, yeah, I don't know where it is. Somewhere in here, if you look in the back of the book and look up gusset, she talks about it. Yeah, I don't know where it is. But the reason we've got this flexible ruler is because we want to measure this curved line. You can just use like a 2-inch ruler too. So I'm measuring from like the bottom part of my armpit up to the balance point is 4 inches there. So I've got to come 4 inches for my gusset, because what happens sometimes is folks will draft the gusset straight up from that point instead of what that actual measurement is. Then the sleeve cap becomes too tight. So then you can just take and make a kind of a soft lemony shape in there, and that will become that side of your gusset. Then you just want to bring that down back into the body of the sleeve. So that's that side of our built-in gusset. Then on the other side, I'm going to measure from the back balance point to 0. And it's here, it's only 3.5 inches. And that's how far over and up I've got to come. I've got to make that line the same measurement as we measured. How is that for a bad sentence? Make it the same measurement as what you measured. What? I don't understand. Okay, so that was our patterning review. Does anybody, if this is new for you, yes, it might be a bit foreign, but get the book or get any patterning book and start messing with this stuff. Does anybody have like questions about one of those steps that they feel rewatching this won't answer? Because now we're going to make some peasant shirts for peasants. We're going to make patterns today, then I'll cut one out in the morning tomorrow and we'll look at like some different steps of sewing it together. The majority of the steps will be in the other set of video recordings. No questions? Okay, I'm going to drink some water from my Edna Mode cup. Oh, isn't it great that Nutcracker is over? And that Nutcracker season has just started again. Okay, we've already got Nutcracker stuff to do. But one of them's fun. I think we're making like a 12-foot light up octopus that starfish and squid and seahorses come out of. So that'll be cool. And if you're in the Cape Cod area, let us know. You can help us put it together when we get there. We'll probably have to drive it in a car. Okay, so let's look at a couple different shirts. This is a new book I got from a friend. It's really just like a retelling of the old London Royal Ballet book. This is called How to Dress Dancers, Costume Techniques for Dance. How to Dress Dancers, Costume Techniques for Dance. One of the nicest people in the world gave me this one. But it's, and it's got some good illustrations of kind of like what the standards are. And this is by Kent Harrison. But don't tell Kent Harrison's people, and don't tell the people that wrote the old London Royal Ballet book. He's kind of just taken dressing for the ballet and put it in a different order. So this book that somebody clearly has gotten new is a good substitute for the old London Royal Ballet book. But let's just look at some like sleeves and tunicky kind of stuff that just shows up everywhere. There's like it's a fitted tunic. I might be Romeo. I might be Romeo's friends, or I could be in Swan Lake tunic with a fitted sleeve. There's the overly fluffy dashing. Maybe I'm going ice skating. Maybe I'm Romeo. Maybe I'm one of Romeo's friends. Puffy sleeve with a collar like we did. Then there is the like, I think maybe he's going into a monastery. I'm not quite sure what's going on with that. Then like this guy, he's definitely going ice skating, or, one of Romeo's friends. It's like you can use all of it for different things, except this guy is 100% in La Fille del Mal Garde, or the Wayward Sister. This big opening boat neck is very, there's a lot of balancing pieces. There's a lot of much older pieces. You can imagine Mikhail Baryshnikov with his puffy puff sleeve and his loose silky shirt. I thought I saw one of the guys had a cross on. Well, he kind of has a cross on. They all might be going into the monastery too. Then there's like another like Prince Swan Lakey something with a puffy slashed sleeve. Like these are tunics, not shirts, but it's good to look at all this stuff. This guy's for sure ice skating or standing next to Santa Claus selling toys to children. And then this is very similar to the shirt we did that's in the other set of recordings that gets used and adapted for almost every ballet ever. He shows up somewhere, the guy with this shirt. But at the end of the last class, I was talking about like a more folk style or more Russian style shirt. And that's what we're going to look at in here is this like looser, baggier shirt. And we've got a really slick placket you can put in there. So we're going to draft more of a Mandarin style collar. And then we are going to make a looser, boxier sleeve with a separate gusset, just because it's like cool look. You know, sometimes you want something that looks rustic. And what's great is now that we've got this body block drafted for our dude, we already know how wide it needs to be for his chest, and we can refigure our shoulder and stuff very simply from this. So we're just imagining a rectangle plunked over that. And then maybe we should just do a puffy sleeve top that's more like a tunic, but you know, it applies to shirt stuff. Because I think when you rewatch the other one, you'll understand /spread make volume. Okay, what else was I gonna say? I was gonna see if there's any other. What's great too from the body blocks, right? Look at our like little national men. From the same body block, you can bang out your vest and your shirt all at the same time. So that's like the true joys of patterning and making body blocks. I thought there was more than one guy thing in here. Oh, well, you know, these guys are ready to yodel or sell their wares, but here's just another version. It's like a similar collar, or don't tie it close for a different look. And then this sleeve is a little less gathered in the cap, but full in the wrist. And the torso, the upper torso of the shirt's a little more fitted and a little more gathered at the waist. So from the one shirt that we looked at on the dress form, even from that one pattern, you could make umpteen million patterns just by chopping up that existing one. But let's go for knit your own leotard if you're a knitter. This book smells like mold and predates Lycra, and was a gift from someone who actually spent time at the London Royal Ballet Costume Shop. And every time a class leaves this room, I panic and run to the shelf to see if this has been hoisted. There are copies of it every now and then on eBay. It's from Lawson and Revitt, Revitt, and it's called Dressing for the Ballet. So let's... What? Jared found one at the library down the street. Can you steal it and put a different, just go in and take it and put it in your backpack, and then we'll sell it to somebody. A lot of both of those books, everything's pretty outdated, but it gives you a really, really good idea of stuff. Like it'll list the materials that aren't around. The tutu construction in both of them is a little different than a lot of people have adapted it to now. One is because of materials, and the other is because of, you know, if you think of like Hans Christian Andersen and the Red Shoes, for a while those super fluffy, poofy powder ball tutus were all the rage, and that's kind of the time that the London Royal Ballet book was published. So it's just a difference. Now let's make a collar, which we did do a shawl, well, not really a shawl collar. We did a collar with a roll line for the shirt and the other one, but we're going to make a Mandarin collar for this shirt. And for many of you, it's review, but thank you for tuning in. We appreciate everything in your business. Here it is on page 148. So we need to decide. So we're making like a Russian cassock-y style folksier shirt here rather than the more fitted shirt we did the other set. Decide how tall your collar is. So we're going to make it 1.5 inches tall. And we are going to measure the neck on me because the dress form neck is like way too small. And then we're going to adjust the neck of our body block too, because I'm convinced it's not 16.5 inches. So we're going to have to adjust our neck before we get into the rest of our shirt. So we're up to 16.5. So step one, divide that in half. So 16.5 divided in half is 8.25. And then this box, so we're on step one, draw a rectangle on page 148. It's half of the base of the neck, and then it's however tall we want the collar plus 1 inch. So if we want a 2-inch collar, we're going to go up 3 inches. If we want 1.5 inch collar, which is what we're going to do, we're going to go up 2.5 inches. So it's the height of your collar plus 1 inch. If I was doing somebody who was super duper short and childlike, I might only go up 3/4 of an inch or 1/2 an inch. So you just kind of imagine that I call it a just because number. When there's a number in the book that you haven't come up with and provided, you could assume it's for like an averaged height man and woman, and that if you've got a gargantuan guy or an itsy bitsy guy, you might fudge it a little bit. Now I have to read. Boom, boom, boom. Locate point E 1 inch up from point D. Let's write them. A, B, C, D. Oh my gosh, can I be stupid for a second? Do you guys know this one? Ducks. Oh, whoop. Has anybody ever seen that? No? I have to goof around for just a little bit. Has anybody got it yet? Can you even read it? This is something you can show your kids later, or your husbands and wives. I'm done, I promise. Get it? Get it? Can anybody read it? Ducks. Not ducks. OSARCD bitty wings. YB Ducks. That was on a bathroom somewhere I worked in Omaha, and it took me like a solid year to figure out what the hell it was. So remember that. Okay, so up from D, E is 1 inch. I mean, I'm impressed that I can remember this. I've held on to this for some reason since I was like 19 years old. Okay, locate point F 3/4 of an inch to the right of B. So the top of this will be the top of our collar. Somebody's got to be laughing at home. No, nobody. Locate point G, the height of the collar measurement up from C. So C is our center back. That's what made me think of this, because over here it says CBCD. It's close. It's close. Then we're going to take a curved ruler and connect those points. So G over here is the center back of our collar, and we're going up to F. So this is making a mandarin collar with no over and underlap. Is the dog still alive? Have we jinxed it? I shouldn't have said anything. Then we're connecting F to E with a straight line. Then the curve that you put at the top of the collar, you kind of are repeating the same curve at the bottom. Now, we're going to come back to this here in a second. So we've got a general collar shape with the front on the right and the back on the left. But what this collar doesn't have is anything to over-underlap. It doesn't surpass itself at all. So we have to decide if our shirt needs to surpass it. And I'm going to say, since we're making, kind of this kind of a neck for like a Russian shirt with shoulders and some trim and stuff down the front, that it only needs to meet. So we're not going to add over and underlap. But we might, let's round it a little bit instead of it coming to a point, let's make it come to a little bit of a curve. Now, collar squared away. Let's come back to our neck issue, that the neck of me, who's our imaginary performer, needs to be 16 and a half. And really, right, like we talked the other day in the hat class, like if your head measures 22, make the hat a little bit bigger, because your hole will get smaller as you add stuff and put ribbon and stuff in there. This side measures 5 and a half. It's going to be too small, I hope. This side measures 7 and a half. That's, no, 2 and a half. Boy, I added it in my head. I was adding. This measures 5 and a half. This measures 2 and a half. That's 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, we're pretty close. So right now we have a 16-inch neck. Let's make it a 17-inch neck. So we want to gain an inch. So there's a half an inch of play in there. So what I do is I just start by taking a little tiny bit off the sides at the shoulder, and I bring the front down a tiny bit, and I bring that curve in a tiny bit. So let's redraw it. It's too bad it wasn't more extreme. If I had had like a 19-inch neck, we'd have to finagle that a little bit more. And like anything that you can measure and check is always like a super great thing. Like some measurement sheets, people measure the center of the shoulder to the waist, measure it on your pattern, and if you're coming up that the waist here is a little bit short, go ahead and make it a little bit longer right now, or at least split the difference. So let's see if our neck is closer now. 5 and a, no, it's like 5 3/4. Okay. This is such minor adjustments, but live TV. And 3, so 5, 6, 7, 8. So we now have 8 3/4 times 2 is 16, 17 and a half. So it's crazy how much just changing that one curve on each side made it. But we're going to say we're good now. My neck is 16 and a half. That neck is 17 and a half. It's got an inch of ease. Probably if you wanted to go back through, you could pick some point in the middle, right? When I worked at Summer Stock Theater, for different back, neck to waists, we actually made a template for different size necks. So if you had a 16, 17, 18, 15-inch neck, we would just draft the body block and then lay the template for that size neck on it, and it takes all the guesswork out. But definitely you want to make it a little bit bigger than you think. Okay, so let's look back. We're making this very, very generic shirt, which is very generic, but I just want you to see the other shirt was more elaborate, and I want you to see how you can use the body block to do simple things rather than just complicated things. So that shirt, I can tell you this. Let's look at what the pattern really is, and we're going to change it some, because that's no fun if we don't. That really, oldie-timey is a great big rectangle that's the front and back with a hole cut in it for a neck. I guarantee if you put that shirt on a guy down the street at the Joffrey, he's going to be wanting you to do a little bit with the shoulder because it's a little bit sloppy and different things like that. So we're going, boy, someone's called me like 3 times in a row. How come I'm not hearing my ringer? Were you hearing my ringer?
No.
I just have to look. I can't help myself. From Washington, D.C. Let's see if they left a message. So we're going to make that simple shirt, but we're going to like vogue it up a tiny bit by having a little shape in the shoulder, by having a tiny bit of shape, in the armhole, but not a ton. So that shirt's really a rectangle. So I'm going to just draw right onto here. That shirt, if we were making it, would be a straight line from the front neck to the back neck. And then it would be a straight line down to the sides. I'm listening to this real quick. Sorry, guys. What is it actually? I don't know what it is. I have been getting so many junk calls. It's unbelievable. Okay, so we would imagine that the shoulder goes straight down from there. I get stuff wanting me to buy drugs. Or like not like bad drugs, like drugs you can get from a pharmacist. So that's what that shirt really is. It's just a big rectangle like this. And you can decide how far down it goes. But if you want to adapt it a little bit, I'm going to kind of split the difference between the shoulder. So there's a little bit of a seam in the shoulder, or a little bit of angle to the shoulder. And we're going to kind of find a point halfway between this really exaggerated armhole and a little more fitted armhole. So it's just another example of you can split the difference. So let's do that. Boy, they called again. I think it's a telemarketer. Okay, so I'm going to take my ruler and I've got this pie shape here from the really full blousey shoulder, and I'm going to kind of split my triangle in half there. So we're going to say that's the shoulder now. So instead of going all the way up to there, we're going to raise it up just a little bit. And actually what happens, raising it up here makes it a little looser in the armhole. And then we're going to do the same thing over here. We're going to raise that up a little bit. And then I'm going to kind of cheat the armhole too. So instead of the shoulder or the arm's eye being way out here, I'm going to go in just at almost half. And I'm going to make a sleeve or a shirt that's got a little more shape like this. So it's not as blousey as the one that's just rectangles, but it's a little bit blousey. And so it's got a smidge of fit in the arm, but not a lot of fit in the arm. So we're going to cut this out and kind of tape the shoulders together and then work from there. So it's boxy, but it's not completely boxy. It's definitely not fitted. Okay, so I'm going to cut out the adjusted neck. And we know that if we put the darts in and use the original side seams in our block, this is going to be a very fitted shirt, but we're just going to not follow the side seams and we're not going to put the darts in. So that helps a little bit. Right? It's not revolutionary, but so our front would be on the fold. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Front's on the fold. Back is on the fold. You could put a big old seam down the back if you thought you needed to make it bigger. But we're going to put a placket into the front, and that's probably some of the sewing we will get to today is just an easy way to do the placket in the front. But the next thing we got to do is let's look at our shoulder. So I carved out some of my neck, and we should really just have a 1/2 inch extra in the back, but we've got a little bit more than that. So I am going to kind of add a little bit to the front. So I'm splitting the difference here too. So remember the back of this shoulder, let's look here. This original shoulder is larger and had ease in it, right? But now we're coming way out here. So we're not worried about easing the back into the front anymore. We're going to make the back and the front totally fit. So what I'm going to do is tape this together. And I thought I grabbed some tape. I've got some right here, if I can only reach it. So we don't have to worry about easing the back into the front now because it's such a simple shape and the back is already bigger. But I'm going to tape it together, like it's sewn up. Then I am going to take a little bit of a curve and blend the two together. So even though the original version of this kind of shirt is super boxy, we're having a teeny itty bit of shape to it. So we've trued up our shoulders, so they're just gonna match. And let's cut out our collar. Actually, do you want to grab that white box? Because I think we're gonna set in a placket with the sewing machine, because that I want to show everybody that. If you did the skirt class, the ruffled tiered skirt class, it's very similar. Or there's a box above the serger that just says cotton, even though it's not really cotton in there. Just see if you can find a square of something that seems like a white shirt. I want to sew the placket with everybody. And then we'll be doing more assembly tomorrow. And I think we'll do a puffy sleeve too. So we can check our collar. Gotta make a little tape bridge here. Okay, so the other thing that I like to mark on the collar is like where the shoulder actually is. So before we sew any of this together, you're gonna walk the pieces. So I'm laying my collar on here, and I'm gonna identify where the shoulder is. Then I'm gonna see if my collar actually fits my back neck. And my collar is still about, it's a smidge bigger than my neck. So that's letting me know that we need to adjust the neck a little bit more. See if there's something that's not flowy.
Okay.
You like a stiffer cotton or something. So that's letting me know that my neck still isn't quite cut out the right size because the collar doesn't fit. So I can either whack a little off my collar or I can whack a little off my neck. And if we had actual measurements that we were working from, we would know, I think we said it should be like 17 and a half. Or did I come up with 18? I don't remember. Let's see what the collar actually measures. I'd have to go back and look, but so right now I have a 17-inch neck. So I think it's that we need to make the neck of the shirt actually a tiny bit bigger, and it's somewhere I didn't measure so great. That's why we check this stuff out. So I'm going to shave off the tiniest bit more from the front neck and the tiniest bit more from the back neck, and then re-walk my pieces together and see if indeed they fit. I'm only like 1/8 of an inch off now. So if I do one more, it's crazy. Like when you're dealing with a curve like this, shave off little bits first. Because if you shave off, like if I shaved off 1/4 or 3/8, I know it would be way, 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 way too much. This is good. Well, this is good. This will show up. Actually, give me that one too, and we'll do 2 different colors since it's a sample. So we're going to make a placket for the front of a shirt. And if you'd plug in an iron and grab the ironing board, we're good now. So it's matching up really nice. The other thing we can check out is that the side seams all go together, and they do. My underarm to my hem. The armholes don't have to match. The front and back armhole can be different lengths. Now let's make our very generic sleeve shape to go with this one. We can get rid of M are ducks, M are not ducks. And I am going to just cut it out of the sleeve. So some shirts, right, the higher the armpit in the sleeve is, the more room they have. So like instead of a gusset, you can get away with just pretty much making barely any curve. So that's like a mega gusset. But if this sleeve was going to be fitted, what you've got to watch for, just how we measured the gusset, you've got to watch for, does this actually come up and fit the top of your armhole? So you'd need to measure and see that your arm's eye still will fit in the sleeve. So that very loosely shaped cap will also work. And that's actually kind of what we're going to use for this more peasant looking sleeve. And then we've got to decide now, there's our armhole and our neck, the front of our shirt and our collar. We have to decide if we want a sleeve that's very straight, and we are going to cut a little square gusset for this one just because it's fun. But although this big loose thing doesn't really need a gusset for them to raise their arm, or do we want a little bit of gather in it? And I think we'll go for a little bit of gather. So what I'm going to do, I might need one more piece of paper. Would you grab? Jared's like doing 80 different things right now. We're going to just kind of trace about this wide, one more piece of paper. Look, he's got one there ready to go.
Kind of big.
That's good. I'll use it. So we're going to just put the main points of this sleeve on there. So we need the shoulder to wrist on there. We're going to leave this a great big sleeve. So if we just put a couple points on here. So if his armhole was like 20, we could just kind of come up with a guess of how gathery we want it. If we wanted it super amazingly gathered, we might double it, or even you'll get quite a few gathers if you just add half of it to itself. So let's say we're going to make it, instead of 20, we're going to make it about 30. So there's going to be about 10 inches extra in the cap of his sleeve, of this shirt sleeve, that we're going to ease in. So I've got the side, the original side of my sleeve, the original center, and my arm, my original gussets. But we're kind of straying away completely from this, but we're going to use it as a reference. So I'm going to say, where's my rule? That we're going to make the cap of this kind of follow this type of a curve. So you could totally make it square, but you would have more, if you do the square version that we looked at in that book, you're going to have a lot of extra fabric jamming into their armpits. So if we curve it a little bit, we're kind of meeting in the middle from that kind of really plain shaped sleeve to this little more elaborate shaped sleeve. And I'm actually kind of happy with that curve there, except I'm going to go out maybe to here. So I'm going to do 15 inches on each side of my shoulder. And I'm just kind of using the ruler and walking it along that line. But right, I'm eyeballing some stuff here. For this more rustic sleeve, you don't have to worry about making the back higher than the front. We're going to, in a minute, fold this in half and make it pretty much symmetrical. And then just take a tape measure and kind of figure how big or how loose or how floppy do you want the opening. So right now we've only got a 15-inch opening, but I'm going to say probably if this was going to go, you know, on a guy mazurking in the forest and Merry Widow, or for Russian and Nutcracker, we probably want like a 20-inch opening. So we're going to make the wrist of this sleeve 20 inches. So I know my center, so I just need to go 10 inches on each side of my center. And then if I had a yardstick, it would be easier to get all the way up there. Now, I'm not sure that my curve is right up there. But so what I really should do is measure this side, the curve I eyeballed but could put a ruler on. That's 25, but let's check his shoulder to wrist, make sure it's still 27. It's a smidge over 27, so we're good. Then we only want this one to go up the same as the other one. And this one is only going up 24. So in true Travis nature, we're going to split the difference. So instead of this one going up 25, We're going to make that one 24.5, and we're going to make this one 24.5. We're going to split the difference. Right? There's so many lines that I don't know what's what. That's a little bit better. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Now let's kind of cut it out. And I said this one's going to be symmetrical. So we should still fold this in half and kind of pick one side of the curve or the other side of the curve. Because with what I freehanded, I'm pretty sure that it's not right. But I'm going to hold it on my middle. Would you see if there's any interfacing on that bolt too? Because we're going to make a really nice center front together. Cool, thanks. So again, this could all be squares, but we're making it a smidge fitted and a smidge not fitted. So now we've got our big gathered sleeve. We've got our front and our back. So we got the front, we got the back. Front, back, collar, and this huge sleeve that's going to gather in there. But let's still put in the decorative gusset on this. The square gusset gives it an older time look. And I'm going to just rip off a piece of paper. So they're usually about 2 to 3 inches, maybe even 3.5 inches long. And what it really is it's just a square that gets inserted from where you decide the armpit is down. And since we don't want this super sloppy on his body, we're going to say this is where we're saying the armpit is for his Game of Thrones ballet white shirt here. And I'm going to go with the 3-inch square. Let's do 3.5. So the gusset for this really will just be a 3.5-inch square. You could put a more football-shaped gusset under here too. Like what's funny too is some of these big blousey ones don't really need the gusset, but I think anymore it's a neat look. So don't put this in a shirt that's got a jam underneath a tight fitted vest or tunic. Put it in the shirt where like the whole shirt shows. So that will fit in. Half of it will fit into the underarm, right? So part of it is going to go into your side seam below your underarm. Part of the gusset's going to go there. And then the other part of the gusset is going to join in to the bottom of your shirt sleeve. So that's how that's going to go. And if you want, you can mark how far down does it join up. So if I just go from my armpit down the 3.5, it will give me a good reference as to where it actually meets. Then I would say you're gathering that it's flat to your gusset and then the rest is evenly gathered front and back. Now let's do an imaginary shirt front with a placket. How's everybody doing? Good? Let me tidy this up just a teeny tiny bit. They called again. Boy, I got to get some stuff on the do not call list. Is it like at a point, does it become harassment? Okay, so there's different ways to make plackets and closing in the front, but I'm going to show you guys the one that I always go to for skirts, shirts, different things. Oh wow, this blue stuff's already got interfacing on it. Oh, it's left over from collars. Yeah. This is perfect. We're gonna make we're making a fake front shirt here. We're gonna pretend that this gray is the front of our shirt and that the blue is gonna be the placket. And actually, there's more than one way to do this. Let me iron this really, really fast. I'll come right back. I'm just pressing a square here. There are shirts where part of the placket shows. So maybe I should draw a little picture. Grab me a piece of white paper, would you? This will make more sense here with one of Travis's terrible drawings. So you'll have this neck sometimes on a folk shirt. Collar, terrible drawing of a collar. Shoulders. You'll have it where this just meets up and then disappears into the shirt. So the shirt front is cut on the fold, but there's just a little bit of a slit here. You will also have ones or see ones or have seen at like folk museums and stuff. Collar, but then there's actually a gap in the collar. I drew this bad. And then you see the underside of the placket. You'll see that there's like a contrasting fabric set into there and then the rest of the shirt. Or you'll see this one that's just outlined in trim. So that none of them are right, none of them are wrong. It's just that there's multiple ways to do it. I'm going to do this one to show where you see the underside of the placket. So the shirt folds together but doesn't meet in the middle. It folds with a gap and you can decorate the gap, okay? So we're going to decorate a gap. So I'm going to start with a square, and we're going to just say that that is the center front of our shirt. In fact, I could just kind of trace the neckline. Let's just trace the front neck on here. So I think what we'll do tomorrow is start with that that Nureyev looking sleeve with the poofs and stuff and make that sleeve, and then just look at one more fitted shirt. And then we'll look at the trunk again quick tomorrow too. Do I have enough room? I have enough room. This is just make-believe. So I'm going to trace the neck of my shirt on. I'm going to put a few marks for my center. And then you can decide, like if you're doing the one where there's a different color underneath or the placket shows, you know, kind of decide what it is you're doing. And then you can decide if you want it to be centered on there, right? Do you want your thing to happen right in the middle? Or do you want to jazz it up a little bit and put it over at the side? I've seen some more like Eastern, like India, Pakistan inspired folk looks where they've got it on the side. And I'd say for fun, we're going to put it over on the side. And I know somebody is already saying, but the collar doesn't do that. So what we would do then is if we're going to, let's say we're going to put our opening over here, purposely far off center. Let's see, but I'm going to actually put it over here so that it's on this side when the shirt flips over. You would follow along with your collar pattern, matching the shoulder, then just tape the rest of the collar, you know, mirror your collar in paper like that, and figure out where is your collar actually ending. So there's, you know, right there, we've just adapted it into something else with the pieces we've already got. So let's do it where it's off center on purpose. So I'm going to just put some seam allowance on here. Half inch, half inch, half inches. I'm going to cut that out. Then I'm going to draw onto here exactly where we want the opening to be. So we're saying that this is the inside where I've been putting Sharpie. This is going to be the inside. I can't spell inside of the shirt. That's going to be the outside. Let's draw on the inside our opening. And we're going for an opening that we want to show because we're going to make our placket out of this blue stuff. We're going to say it's an exotic placket here. And I'm going to make it 3/4 of an inch wide. Let's really make it show. So eventually we're going to cut that. We're going to cut into that. But now let's take this blue stuff that's already got interfacing on it. So how great is that? And I'm going to cut a piece that's longer and wider than this. And then we're going to get rid of some of it. So when we did the skirt one, right, guys, I knew like you cut about a 6 by 6 inch square and work with that. I'm not sure when I flip this over what side I want to be my over and under side yet. So I'm going to cut it larger, the placket, and then get rid of what we decide we don't want. Even though I already know what I do want. I just want to show you, I want to show you options. So I'm going to measure this, and it's not 17 inches long. The highest point of it up into the seam allowance is 9 inches. So I'm going to say we're going to start with something that's 11 inches long because it's better to have more than you need. And then I'm going to make it about 8 inches wide so we've got stuff to play with. So why am I starting in the middle? Because that's what people do. They cut something out of the middle, and then their rude teacher puts a picture of it on Costume People and say, can you believe my student cut this out of the middle? And then I want to write back, can you believe your students don't know that you have to backstitch? And then it causes drama and fights, and we don't want that. So I've just made a big rectangle that's longer than my placket and considerably wider, so I've got room to play. So you're going to see here how we're going to play. So now I've got my thing. You can serge around this now. You can serge around it later. I'm not really worried about that part of it. But I am going to lay the blue and the gray right sides together. And I've got this nice center line marked. So I want to make sure that I'm kind of crooked. I want to make sure that the center of my shirt is parallel to my placket fabric, my underpiece. And I'm going to start just kind of right in the middle. And I'm going to put a few pins in this. I keep losing stuff. I'm going to put a few pins in this. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch that rectangle all the way through. I'm not going to stitch the bit of it that's in the neck because that's our opening. Stuff like this, to me, it's always easier to eliminate fabric rather than to wish you had a little more fabric. And this, right, I always tell everybody to raise the stitch length on their sewing machine. This is the time you can use those itty bitty stitches is around this corner, actually around the whole thing. Use some small stitches. So let's go over to the sewing machine, and we'll be at the sewing machine and the iron for a little bit. And I probably only have crafty scissors, but I can make it work. Okay, so my machine, the Berninas here, they go from 1 to 5. I always tell people most sewing should be at like a 3.5 on these. I'm going to do this at like a minus, a little, not minus, but less than 2. And I'm going to back stitch inside the shirt. So back stitching up in the seam allowance is completely pointless. No reason. You want to back stitch in the garment. Otherwise it will get cut off. And then when you wash it, it will fall away. And I'm going to turn the corner. Boom, 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 boom. So this one is a placket where we want the other color to show because it's unique looking. Oh, I'm caught on a pin. Don't get caught on a pin. These feet with the slit in the side drive me nuts. Now I'm going to back stitch in the shirt, not in the seam allowance. You can backstitch in both if you feel you need to. There's nothing wrong with that. So now I am going to cut right down the middle of this through both layers. And then I'm going to cut a Y into the corner. So we want to get really good into the corner with craft scissors, you know. Have the right tools, I guess. I want to get all the way to that corner without cutting the thread, without cutting the sewing machine thread. Hey, that's pretty good. Now we're going to flip it around and give it a press and then see kind of like the different things we can do at this point. And I think I can just bring the iron right here. Before I flip it over, since we did a wider thing, right? If you could do this with a 1/4 inch gap, with an inch gap, with a 2-inch gap, whatever you want. But since we've got a little bit of a gap, I'm going to start by pressing my seams open. I'll have more success flipping them around if I press them open at the beginning. I'm going to press that little guy open. Then I'm even going to go like this. And like, right, I only kind of like half pressed it open. Now I'm going to like really press it open. Maybe not the little one because he's hard to get to. And I'm going to like really press this open. So this is like what we did on the skirt in the ruffled skirt class. But we didn't, we're being a little more free with this one. So now let's lay this here and give it another press. So here's our neck. Right? There's no underlap yet. There will be in a moment. And we're going to decide which side we want the underlap to be. You want it to lay. Right? If you're getting puckers in the corner, it means you haven't clipped it close enough. Be fearless. Leave the seam allowance, but clip up to the corner. Now we should decide if his shirt is hooking this way or this way. I kind of think that just following the same left over right is easy, but you don't have to. I've seen folk shirts that go both ways. So now we've got the same amount of extra blue on both sides on the inside. So we're going to use that extra to create our underlap. And you can just make as much underlap as you've got fabric for. So now we have got, look at how great that looks. That looks pretty great. So now we've got somewhere here to either put little crocheted loops and little glass beads or little brass beads. And then it goes beyond. See how now the underlap goes beyond the overlap. If you want more underlap, cut a bigger piece. And now that we've kind of figured this out, if we're going to manufacture a bunch of these, we can remeasure, we can cut some of this off, and we can figure out like what is our actual measurement in the square. But I can let you guys know what size square we actually started with. So now I'm going to give that a little bit of a press. You can serge some stuff in here too. I'm going to grab the pins and come right back to here. So now the only thing that's really left to figure is what's going on with some of the seams. So I can use my underlap. If I serge this edge, I can now push my seams back to the underlap. And catch them inside the underlap. How nice does that look? And actually, as I'm doing this, I've got a shirt myself from India where this portion of the overlap, this extra piece of cotton there, it's like a really thin cotton, actually runs into the armhole. They just run the whole piece over there rather than trying to figure out like, what are we doing with this piece, right? So So look at stuff in stores and look at, you know, it's fun to see how different things are done. I think some of it's done just for speed and some of it's done for beauty, but I find it interesting. So now we're just gonna like put some stitches around this sucker. So I'm gonna stitch down into my underlap, right? Because if I stitch over here, it's not gonna catch the seam. So we're gonna imagine this edge is serged, and then I'm gonna stitch down here. Then my overlap, I'm gonna just stitch a box around and get rid of the excess. So we're gonna just say that we're gonna serge off, right? We can cut off. Maybe I should cut it off. It'll be more clear to people what I'm doing. Let me go over it to here. We're gonna say I only need this much of this sucker. So I'm gonna take, let's see what size that we actually started with too. So it was 11 inches long by 8 inches wide. But if we're taking off 3 inches, you could have started with 11 by 5. I think I started with 11 by 8. It's like 2 3/4 inches we're taking. Let's put a couple pins there. So you can put this in the center too. And like, right, we made a gap that was 3/4 of an inch. You could make a gap that's only a quarter. A quarter is about the smallest that stays looking nice. And you can, if you did it in fabric that matched, then the split isn't emphasized. So you decide like design-wise, is this something I'm trying to show off? I've got to put a little clip right here so that I can get to my seam allowance for the neck later. Right, we're not even putting a collar on this. But I need that to hook my collar into. You decide design-wise if emphasizing the placket is something you need to do. Now I can get rid of some of the bottom of it too. Or if it is something you don't need to do. And this is great in a sleeve, the back of a sleeve. This trick works in a dress back. It works all kinds of places. So now let's just put a few more stitches around here and then have a look. So, oh, look, I left the iron down to burn the ironing board. Again, I do it in classes. I'm going to set this place on fire someday. So I'm coming over about an 8 because I pushed the seam allowance in there and I've got to deal with the seam allowance. And that seam allowance I pushed in there doesn't need to be serged, but it can if you want to. Then I'm going to come over. I'm going to go past it a little bit. I'm going to go into the bottom to help hold the bottom of all of this down. And like the top stitching, you can totally decide how much or how little you're really interested in. But when I go up the other side, I don't want to catch my underlap. So I did like a back stitch forward and a back here to really make sure that's not going to unravel. Now, on my overlapped side, right, I'm going to just decide how far over I want to put a stitch. You could even do a little blind stitch down this edge if you don't want to see it at all. Actually, let's just do that. Let's do a blind stitch. So we're just hooking down an edge. Let's see if I can do it without the foot. Oh, that'll be close. So we'll see just the little pricks of white thread on the other side. And I'm going to run that the whole way down. If my thread matched, it would be better. But it's good that the thread doesn't match for this. And then I reversed the itty bitty bit, but I want to make sure this is really secure. So I'm going to change my machine to a straight stitch, and I'm going to just catch a few stitches on the placket and none on the shirt. So I'm just anchoring my threads. Now I can really go forward and then do a good back stitch. So I did my back stitch so it won't show gross on the outside. And then we're going to give it another press. Well, actually, too, then like it's some national shirts, and like this one that I'm thinking of in particular, then they do this at the bottom to get rid of some of that lump. You can do a straight stitch. So this is some of the excess. You can turn that into an angle. Chop off the excess and then do a nice zigzag to bind it all together. And then if there's ever a repair or something needs fixed or you decide to take it out, it will be just awful. But hopefully it'll last so long that that's not a problem. Okay, let's give it another press. Oh, that's nice. So you'll see this row of prick stitch from where I did the blind stitch, those white. If I'd have shrunk my zigzag a tiny bit and used gray thread, it would show up much less. But it's kind of good that it shows up. That's a stitch that a lot of people kind of forgets on most sewing machines, is the blind stitch. So does anybody have questions about that? You can take a ruffled skirt and use the same thing to finish the back of a skirt, because we're like a couple minutes from the end and I think we're at a good spot. So I'm going to start with a poofy sleeve tomorrow. And then we're going to just look at, we're going to make a poofy sleeve and then see where the wind leads us. Because I think the rest of this shirt, everybody, after watching the last one, should have a grasp. I wore my Katy Perry hat. Should have a grasp on, like, you put shoulders together, you put sides together, and stuff like that. Cool. Well, thank you, everybody. We will see you tomorrow. Bye. My face looks so